Hello, my name's Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video where today we're going to be looking through the Game Week 20 wildcard teams. Of course, as a lot of you may know, we've now got the second wildcard going into the second half of the season. A few of you might be in a little bit of a sticky situation with the yellow cards accumulated for some players, injuries to other players. So, for those that are using the wildcard this week, here is a team that we suggest as a good base point to go with.
Yeah, so getting started into the wild card then, like Ben mentions, you're probably only really going to want to use it if you really need to. There's a lot of game weeks to go and also a lot of blanks and doubles to go. So yeah, being able to save it for later would be, a high recommendation from the both of us. But if you are in a sticky situation, maybe you haven't been playing for a few weeks, this could be a good draft for you to maybe take a look at. And also if you're just playing generally, this is sort of a good sort of tester to see how many of these players you have in your own teams going forward. So in goal, we've got Sells. Obviously, Nottingham Forest defensively have been ridiculous this season. They sort of backed up the really good data from last season. And yeah, clean sheets galore for them at the moment. Obviously, Sells provides good value, I think. He's just shy of 5 million, I think at 4.7 or 4.8 million. So yeah, a really nice option between the sticks who's going to be reliable week in, week out. In the defence, we've got obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's 7.2 million now, which is kind of pricey. So if you're going to want to get him, it's probably going to be around now before he gets too big of a price gap between him and Van Dijk. But yeah, United at home this week. In general, Liverpool's fixtures over the next 6 to 8 game weeks are ridiculous. So yeah, it's time to jump on them. They've got a double coming up in game week 25 potentially as well. It's not been confirmed, but it's very likely to be that week. So yeah, good option to go forward. 5 attack and returns so far this season. Anthony Robertson's next. Obviously, 6 assists so far this season. It's been ridiculous. So attacking. Obviously, playing more of a left wing back role in the last couple of games as well for Fulham, which is interesting, obviously, for those attacking returns. And then we've got Daniel Munoz as well in the starting of defence. Chelsea at home this week isn't great, but Crystal Palace has some really nice fixtures, and he has some stupid goal threat. I think he accumulated over 0.5 xG from right wing back at the weekend, which is crazy. So he's the kind of guy who you could play no matter what the fixture, like we were alluded to here with that Chelsea at home fixture. What's the thoughts on the defence, Ben, and any more pointers to add?
Yeah, I mean the key thing to note really is all the defenders we have selected are fullbacks in some sort of capacity. We know so far this season that clean sheets have been pretty premium all the way through the league. Obviously, Sells has been sort of one of the standouts in getting those clean sheets, so it makes sense as to why we've gone for him there. Yeah, it's all about the attacking threat really. All of these guys have looked in good form and have produced those attacking returns at key times. So I think in any wild card, having sort of 3 of these 4 defenders at least is going to be sort of a key to have. Munoz, of course, has been fantastic. Robinson, I do believe, the fixture run's so good for Fulham that it's worth having them in. The only downside that I'd maybe sort of say is the coverage within Arsenal. Obviously, you're going to want a little bit of coverage in the Arsenal defence. So if you wanted to sort of upgrade / downgrade, you may have to make a sacrifice further up the pitch. So it's just one to note that the goal threat of Gabriel isn't going to go away. So it's another player that you should probably look at considering, albeit like the guys that we've got in here rotate in and out fairly easily, whereas Gabriel, you may be sort of inclined because of the funds that you put in to stick with him each week. Okay, so moving on into the midfield, and naturally we're going to go with Salah and Palmer. Not too much needs to be said about either of them. They've both been in such fantastic form. Even with a Cole Palmer blank, he accumulated a lot of XGI. He had 2 sort of chances off the post. He created a big chance. So, those returns were there, and another day he would have got, a 10 plus point haul. The same goes for Salah. He's been in absolutely ridiculous form, 200 points already, on course to smash the FPL record. So I think, it's a guarantee to have those 2 in. Anthony Gordon is a really good option, and we believe that a double or even triple up is worth your while from the Newcastle assets. Despite the fixtures looking tough on paper over the last few games, they've just been absolutely fantastic, and they're almost hitting the strides that we thought they were going to at the start of the season. Obviously, sort of injuries and such has an impact, but Newcastle are playing, definitely how we expected them to. Bruno Fernandes is the one that I believe that you can interchange with sort of a number of different players if you wanted to. Obviously, Manchester United are very inconsistent at the moment, but the one consistency within Manchester United this season has been the returns and the output of Bruno Fernandes. So it's almost a case of, do you want to go for the quality of player or do you want to go for a team in form? There's a number of ways that you can go here. You could downgrade Bruno to upgrade to Gabriel, say, who we thought might be missing in the defence. So that position is interchangeable. You can go for any number of options, albeit all of them will have a downside, just like Bruno. There isn't a standout sort of player at that price point. Josh, that's the midfield there. Obviously, Ismail Assar as well on the bench, who is that budget option. There is the potential that you could go for sort of another budget option or sort of a player sort of around the similar price tag to Bruno.
Yeah, 100%. He's basically there as like a cash cow. So if you want to move the funds to defence or the attack, then it's pretty easily done in one or two transfers. Gordon, I think for me, should be a lock on a wild card. The fixtures are actually, they don't look good on the FDR, but they are really good fixtures for Newcastle. Obviously, Spurs this week is fantastic. I think he'll have a pretty good field day against them. Obviously, Palmer and Salah pick themselves, as Ben mentioned. So Bruno, for me, I think the fixtures after Liverpool, it's not a good entry point for Bruno by all means against Liverpool this week, but I think Southampton at home next week. I think they have Brighton after that. They're facing teams that do concede goals. And as we've seen, even throughout this period where United have been struggling, Bruno Fernandes is key to that United team going forwards. Against Newcastle, they really struggled and he was suspended. So I expect that to have an uptick and him to come back into the side straight away and then hopefully start scoring goals. But like you said, there's loads of other options. We're going to be dropping a transfer targets video as well. So make sure you check that out to see all of the midfield options that we'd consider. Okay, then, so moving on to the forward line, and to be honest, it's a bit sparse at the moment in terms of options. There's less than 5, I would say, that you can genuinely consider options outside of Alexander Isak, who I'll get started with. Obviously, again, another goal against Manchester United. I think that's 6 games on the bounce now with goals scored in, which is just unbelievable form. It's the sort of form, like Ben mentioned, that we thought that we'd get at the start of the season from Newcastle, but they just seem to be clicking into gear at the moment. I think their team in general looks really good. So, yeah, I'll expect more returns from him, especially this weekend against Spurs. Chris Wood's up next, Wolves away. Obviously, I've owned him for the last 4 weeks. He blanked 3 and then got that double-digit return last week against Everton. I think if you're going with him, you've got to expect consistency, but nothing too crazy. I think the double-digit haul last week was obviously great, but I wouldn't be expecting that every single week. Maybe a goal every other game week, something to that sort of extent I'd be expecting from Chris Wood in a Nottingham Forest side that are ridiculously good at the moment. And then João Pedro rounds off the attack. Cheap enabler, sub 6 million for someone who's on penalties and just, the main man in that Brighton team. He has been underwhelming, but those 2 assists have almost, reignited him a little bit, albeit, quite fortuitous against, who do they play? Brentford? Villa, that's it. I was about to say Brentford, I just knew it was wrong. Against Villa last night as we were recording this. So Arsenal, again, not the best entry point for him, but then Ipswich after that, I'd be inclined to go with him this week. You can make a whole host of decisions in terms of who you want to start in this sort of lineup that we've got going. Bruno and Pedro don't have the best fixtures, same as Sarr, but you could maybe interchange that about as you see fit. What's the thoughts on the front line, Ben?
Yeah, the entry point for this game week in particular is always going to be difficult because there are a lot of difficult matchups with key FPL players. And of course, with that João Pedro, pick, it is a really difficult one because I think there aren't many alternatives outside of Pedro that you could go for. In any other FPL season, I'd absolutely not be recommending him on a wild card because the statistics over the last sort of 5 to 6 game weeks, haven't been great at all. He hasn't been picking up the XGR that we saw earlier on in the season, and he's picked up high XGI in just a small number of games, which is really interesting to see. So he is definitely a hot and cold player. Let's hope that the 2 assists can, hotter him up as an FPL asset, so to speak, because, the Arsenal home fixture, we've generally seen him haul in the fixtures where it's perceived to be a difficult one for Brighton, whereas against the low block teams, they do tend to struggle a little bit more. So, I'd hope to see some returns from João Pedro, and is a good hold for owners as well. Isak is, in my opinion, the 3rd name on the team sheet behind Salah and Palmer. He is just that good at the moment. And he can haul at any given moment. So he is a fantastic pick to have and absolutely a lock on the wild card. And Chris Wood actually is a really decent asset as well, because he is ticking along quite nicely. A couple of weeks without a return, but really unlucky not to get a return in those 2 weeks that he did blank. So I think you can almost put him, just that step below the Isak level in terms of strikers on form. He's looking really good and almost sort of scoring, near enough every week in terms of expected goal involvement. So yeah, in terms of the front line, I don't think you can go too wrong with going with sort of all three of those players. Of course, there's going to be sort of the consideration for someone like Nicholas Jackson. Yes, he got benched last game week, but I don't think Maresca's going to do that again with, the points that they've dropped as a result of benching him. And it's clear to me that he is the best striker at Chelsea, because the other options around him just haven't reached the consistency levels and the levels of expected goal involvements from the chance that come about. He may not finish them all, but he at least finishes one off every time. So yeah, I think in terms of that front three is really fantastic options. Jackson maybe that consideration, and you've always got to look at the potential of Haaland if he starts exploding again, but it hasn't happened in a little while now, so it's just one to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, 100%. One more thing to consider as well is obviously there's no triple Liverpool in this lineup. So this could mean two things. You could either look to bring in a Liverpool attacker, like a third attacker, like maybe Cody Gakpo, Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota, or you could obviously look towards game week 24 where the assistant manager chip comes into play and obviously have Arnie slot, because you are only allowed to have 3 Liverpool assets even with the manager. So it does leave you quite flexible in that regard, whether you want to use Arnie's slot for that double game week that they will have coming up, or maybe go to an actual player for those game weeks. So it will be interesting to see how you can plan it out. That's what makes this wildcard quite decent, is that it is so flexible, and there are loads of different price points that you can sort of move around about, like with that Bruno Fernandes example that we mentioned. Okay, then, so that wraps up our Game Week 20 wildcard video. Let us know what your thoughts are on the wildcard in the comments. How many players do you have from this wildcard in your team at the moment?
Yeah, it's a really interesting time if you are wildcarding. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never